Welcome to DA Sports. I'm your host, DASASIE. Thank you. This is episode number 59. Now, in today's episode, of course, it's all about the NBA Finals. But before we get into my prediction for the NBA Finals, of course, we're also going to recap the conference finals, talk about how they all went, talk about how they went in correlation to my predictions, which of course you know I got right, and go from there. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so to start off this NBA Finals Edition episode, we have to talk about the NBA Conference Finals that led to the finals. So, starting off in the Eastern Conference, the Indiana Pacers were able to knock off the New York Knicks in 6 games. And if you watch my last episode, I predicted that. Not only did I predict that Indiana would win, but I predicted they would win in 6 games. Not only did I predict that they would win in 6 games, but I actually predicted which team was going to win which specific games that were following after the last episode. So hopefully you followed suit, because if you did, then you also got it right. So that matchup in itself was definitely a matchup about, stylistic comparisons. Indiana had more depth and they had more pace, which is one of the things that I mentioned in the last episode in terms of ironic that their biggest strength is also tied into not only their name and their team, but also tied into what the name of their team was derived from, right? Indiana Pacers derived from the pace car from the Indianapolis 500, which is the biggest sporting event in the city of Indianapolis. And ironically, it's also how they win most of their games by setting a higher pace than other teams can keep up with. And that's exactly what they used to their advantage. They actually forced Tom Thibodeau to use more of his bench than he's used pretty much ever. Usually, Thibodeau runs about 7 players, maybe 8 at the most. They forced him to try to use 10 and even 11 players in one of the games. Unfortunately for New York, it wasn't enough. And maybe that's part of the reason why just yesterday it got announced that Tom Thibodeau got fired. Now, personally, I don't think he should have been fired because, other than myself, most people didn't even predict before the season that the Knicks would make it this far in the playoffs. Now, part of it may be because they thought they wouldn't make it this far because of Boston, and after getting past Boston, they thought they would at least make it to the actual NBA Finals, but they were wrong about that. And we got to give respect to Rick Carlisle. He's one of the best coaches in the league. He does have a championship already when he was with the Dallas Mavericks. And that Dallas Maverick run, not only did it finish off by going through the Miami Heatles when LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh were all together, they also went through a ton of other great teams en route to get to that. So Rick Carlisle has shown that he's an excellent coach and shown that he's able to win games and series against teams that other people think should be favored to win. And that happens sometimes. Coaching is huge, especially when it comes to playoff matchups, and that played itself out in the Eastern Conference Finals. Pascal Siakam did get the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, but it was Tyrese Halliburton who was really making big time shots. He's the reason that they came back in game 1 and hit the last second buzzer beater. Well, they ended up not winning the game but sending it into overtime. Nonetheless, he also had another game where he had an iconic stat line. I believe he had 30, 15, and 12 as a triple double, and he had 0 turnovers. So just crazy stat line. He definitely propelled the team. And even though it could be argued that Pascal Siakam is the biggest scorer on the team, it can't really be argued as far as who's the person that really ignites the team as a whole, and that would be Tyrese Halliburton. And it's definitely going to be his performance is directly going to correlate to their potential success in the NBA Finals. So we'll see how that goes, but congrats, of course, to the Indiana Pacers for making it to the finals. Now, on the other side, In the Western Conference Finals, we had the Oklahoma City Thunder beating the Minnesota Timberwolves in 5 games. And again, hopefully you watched the last episode. I predicted it. Not only did I predict that OKC would win, I predicted they would win in 5 games, and that's exactly what happened. I predicted which games that Minnesota was going to win, or which game they were going to win, and the fact that OKC would win the last game 4 and game 5 to close it out, despite the fact that in game 3, Minnesota won by one of the largest margins of victory ever. And I said it wasn't really going to mean anything, and of course I was correct. Now, in that matchup, it really came down to partially coaching, which is another theme that I mentioned from the Eastern Conference Finals, but a lot of it had to do with just the overall execution of the Thunder's game plan. The way they play defense, it makes it tough for any superstar on the other team. They did the same thing in the previous series against Joker, even so much by having Caruso guard Joker even on the block when Joker is literally a foot taller than Caruso, but they play great team defense, a lot of extra rotations, a lot of hands at the ball whenever the ball is put on the floor. And they did the same thing to Anthony Edwards in that series. Pretty much kept him, on lock as much as you possibly can for somebody who's that prolific of a scorer. Even in the elimination game, I believe Anthony Edwards only finished with like 18 points, which for him is definitely a low. We saw Julius Randle start off the series with a great game, and he had one other game where he had significant impact, but other than that, he was held to be ineffective. And again, that was part of OKC's clamp defense, which they have been providing all season, which is why not only were they the number 1 seed in the West, they were the best record in the entire league, and had the tied for the 5th best overall record in a regular season in all of NBA history. So, of course, that leads us to where we're at right now, the NBA Finals. Now, before the season started, I predicted that OKC was going to make it to the finals and they were going to win it all. Now, to be fair, before the season started, I picked them to beat the Knicks in the finals. The Knicks lost in the conference finals, so now they're playing the Pacers instead. And yeah, of course, my prediction for the NBA Finals is that OKC is going to win. And before anybody tries to say that, oh, it's just a biased prediction because I'm an OKC Thunder fan, it honestly isn't. If you go back and look at my predictions from the previous season, even though I predicted that OKC would have a good season when previously they didn't, I did not pick them to win the championship last year. This is actually the first time I've actually picked them to win the championship since Kevin Durant was on the team. So this is not something like, oh, I just picked them every year because that's my favorite team. I truly believe, based on how they played last year and the changes they made in the offseason, that they were going to be the best team in the league come playoff time. And so far, it looks like I was right. Now, in terms of the series as a whole, I've been going back and forth, but I am going to say that the series is going to go 6 games. Now, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it went 5 games. I was going to say if the Knicks made it to the finals that it was going to be a sweep. I will give Indiana more respect than that. I do think they'll get at least 1 game. But for the sake of my overall prediction, I'm going to say that they're going to get 2 games, and then it will get finished in 6 in total. Now, I believe game 1 is going to be the most crucial game that determines really like the flow of the series. If you recall, Indiana has been an underdog in the last 2 series they've played. They were heavy underdogs against the Knicks, and in the series before that, they were heavy underdogs against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And in both of those series, they won game 1. So they went on the road and shocked the team that was the favorite and took home court advantage. Now they're lined up with the same type of scenario coming into the NBA Finals against OKC. Now, if Indiana is able to go into OKC and win game 1, I think it's really going to start to change the narrative around the series, and I think people are going to give Indiana a little more respect and a higher chance to win. Now, personally, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that there's a reason why the spread for tomorrow's game is 9.5 points, which is a huge amount for an NBA Finals game. That means that they are predicting that OKC is going to win by more than 9 points. And I think that's probably how it's going to play out. I think that the beginning of the game is probably going to be close. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth early. I think the first quarter or so is probably going to be more high scoring as everybody's well rested and people are in the flow of their offense. But once the adjustments start being made to where Oklahoma is fine tuning their defense as far as how they want to apply it to Indiana's style of fast paced offense, I think that's where we're going to see the separation. I think that's where we're going to see turnovers get created and OKC be able to stretch out the lead and ultimately win game one by more than 10 points. Now, if you recall, the last time these two teams met, it was at the end of March. I believe it was March 29th. And Oklahoma City was at home for that game, and they won that game by 21 points. Do I think the final score will get up to that much? Maybe not. Mainly just because if they are up by that much, it's likely that they pull some of the starters late, and then the backups get some scores, and it brings the total down. If you look at actually the closeout game when they beat Minnesota, the final score they won by 30, but in reality, with like 2 minutes left, I believe they were up by 40. And then they pulled all the starters out, and it was just kind of backups playing against backups. And Minnesota's backups hit a bunch of threes and some late scores, including one as time expired. And so the final score ended up them being only winning by 30. I could see this being that type of situation where OKC is up by more than 20, but the game is clearly over and everybody gets pulled out and they only win by like 12 or 14, something like that. So I'm not saying they're going to win by 20, but I do strongly believe they'll end up winning by double digits in game one. And then ultimately, I do think that Indiana will get at least one of their games at home, but I just think ultimately the depth of OKC and the style of play that OKC has is just going to be too much. I think that SGA is going to outshine Halliburton. I think that the pressure of Caruso and Lu Dort will be too much for Halliburton to run his offense effectively. I think the height of Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren is going to make it difficult for Siakam to get off as many points as he did against the Knicks. And ultimately, I do think that OKC will be hoisting their first trophy since moving from Seattle to Oklahoma City and winning it. So that wraps it up for this week's episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please make sure you like and subscribe and share wherever possible. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Peace.